Hello, friends of YouTube. Today we will see the tragic story of Romeo and Juliet. This famous story starts in Verona with the fight between the members of the family Montesco and Capuletta, which was finally stopped by the prince who told them that he would not permit any more fights. Romeo confessed to his friend Bembolo that he was sad because his love Rosalinda didn't correspond with him. On the other side, Paris asked Sir Capuleto permission to marry his daughter Juliet. They accepted and prepared a feast with masks. Bembolo and Romeo knew about this party, and together with Mercury decided to go, so that Romeo would forget about Rosalinda. At this party, where Romeo got to know Juliet, and he fell in love with her at first sight, forgetting completely about Rosalinda. Both Romeo and Juliet got to know that their families were enemies.
Finished their first reunion, Romeo went to the balcony of Juliet, and he got to know that she was in love with him, as he heard tell about her love that she felt for him. Romeo asked a favor to Fray Lorenzo to marry them, and this accepted because he wanted to unite them, and this was the way Romeo and Juliet will get married. The next day, secretly in the Plaza of Verona, the friends of Romeo and Bemolo, the Mercury, with Tebaldo, who was upset because he saw Romeo and the party of his family. So they started fighting, in which Mercurio died. Romeo kills Tebaldo in vengeance of runes of to Juliet to tell Juliet about the death of his cousin Tebaldo. After that, loving Romeo, the prince banishes Romeo, who is in secret meets with the Fray Lorenzo. This suggests him to go where his loved one is and to run away from the city that night. The couple meets and Romeo goes away after Amanda makes the situation a lot more difficult. Milet gets to know that in no 2 days she was go get married with Paris, Juliet.
Juliet gets to know that in 2 days she goes go get married with Paris. Juliet asks for advice to Fray Lorenzo, who gives her a plan of drinking a potion so she would fake her death and act as if she was dead during 48 hours to stop her wedding. And waking up, she finds Romeo and she could run away with her loved one. Guided with her passion, she accepts the plan of Fry and sends a letter carried to tell Romeo about her plan. But this one doesn't get there in time, and Romeo gets to know by other means that Juliet was dead. With his gripe, he goes and buys venom and goes where his loved one is in his way. He bumps in with Paris that attacks him, and finally Romeo dies, looking at Juliet, supposedly dead, and kills himself. Juliet wakes up and seeing that her loved one is dead, decides to kill herself with a dagger in her chest. Finally, everyone sees the scene, and Fray Lorenzo explains the reason of the tragedy. The families reconcile. These are the characteristics of the act. This story is absurd and has shows a lot of superficial love of teenagers with lack of rationality. Out of nowhere, Romeo forgets about Rosalinda, who is the love of his life, gets to know Juliet, and they both fall in love and they get married the next day. The tragedy is shown how the action of love can be negative because of the passionate love that love so naive finds death on its way, like we saw in this last video. Shakespeare didn't invent this story. It came out of the traditional free of medieval. It was inspired out of a poem of Arthur Brock.
Shakespeare gets certain empathy out of the lovers and gives them feeling of dramatic tragedy. That's why for many this story is the most popular and maybe the most tragedy written. But for most this story is under many of his famous tragedies of his author. What catch our attentions are at the age of Romeo, who is 16, and Juliet, who's 13 years old. This gives peculiar passions of innocence. To the characters, this vulnerability takes Juliet to give everything to love and ending in suicide. And in its form, how it's writing, we can say that lyricism is used by sonnets and rhymes. Rhetorical resources I use like oxymorons. The language go next to with the feeling of narrations and the contract are emphasized. Sometimes the solemn, the antis, and when the serpents talk, the language is changed to colloquial. In Romeo and Juliet, the tragedy is not looked for or justified actually. Came out of nowhere or destiny, in difference of Hamlet or Macbeth, in this play tragedy isn't there because of internal factors of conflict of the characters, if not of external factors without a doubt Romeo and Juliet. Is a popular passionate love and tragedy? For many the ideal love even thought. When you continue reading you discover a love that it's hothead and frivolous. Thanks for watch this video and see you in other time.